And then usually this is the part of the show where we go into movies that we are looking forward to watching or movies that we've watched recently. And since we just did an episode last week, guys, there's probably not going to be too much more on to add on to this. So I thought I'd take the opportunity to talk about, as I mentioned, the fact that I watched all 13 Halloween movies this past weekend. That is what I've watched since the last time we did an episode of Late Night at the Movies when we talked about Beetlejuice with Christine. Go back and check that one out in the feed. But if you guys will indulge me here, I'll give my power rankings of the 13 Halloween films here before we wrap up. All right. Yeah. So these are going to be controversial to some. I've looked up some other rankings online, and some mine differ somewhat from some other people's. You see all kinds of rankings online. There's a lot of differing opinions, but I feel like some of my picks might be controversial, and that's why I feel like it's interesting, because certain people like certain aspects about this film franchise, and they kind of gravitate or latch on to certain aspects of certain movies, I think, that are different or better than others. And a lot of the filmmakers that have come on to do these films have tried to take some big swings, and there's been some big misses as a result too, I'll say. But I think there's a few different timelines of films. There's a viral, I think, Instagram video going around, a reel right now. Somebody's talking about it. Actually, he broke it down on a podcast. So there's the original Halloween franchise, which is the first movie, the second movie, the fourth movie, the fifth movie, the sixth movie. Then there's the Halloween 2 and H2O and Resurrection timeline. Then there's the Rob Zombie Halloween timeline, which is the first and second movie that he did. He did 2 movies. Then there's the Danny McBride, David Gordon Green timeline, which is the Blumhouse trilogy, which is Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. Then there's the singular timeline where Halloween 3 exists because it has no relation to any of their Halloween movies. And there's actually a theory online. There is people had tried to go as far as saying there's a moment of the third movie where there's like a scene where the factory explodes. And there's like something in the fire, and people like, it's one of those stupid theories where we were like, if you look very closely, you can see Michael Myers in the fire.
It's in the background. Yeah.
So there's 5 different timelines. So sorry, even the timeline actually of the Halloween Kills trilogy, that one, Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends, they only count the first movie as well of Halloween. And then everything after that, they actually, all those, except for the Rob Zombie one, that one does still count the original movies, as does the H2O timeline. Because the thing with the H2O timeline that ends with Resurrection is, in Resurrection, Jamie Lee Curtis dies. In that movie, she dies at the start of the movie, but then she pops back up in the 2008 version of the David Gordon Green, Danny McBride one. She's alive again, and she's old, and the only thing that they counted was the original Halloween film. So that's kind of interesting in that sense. They actually killed her off in the sequel to Halloween H2O. And that was one of those shitty sequels that they basically just, it looked like, put out as a result of maybe trying to keep the popularity going after H2O. But then maybe Jamie Lee Curtis didn't want to reprise the role. So they're like, hey, maybe we'll just kill her character off. And, she came back years later. And in the Halloween, the 2018 one, at that point, it's 40 years later. So, I mean, it's kind of cool that she's actually reprised her role every 20 years as a result of being in H2O, and then once again in the 2018 version, right? So it's kind of neat in that sense. Okay, so here's my ranking.
Yeah.
Original Halloween. Okay, number 1. Yep. Or should I do down up? I mean, I already said at the start of the show that this number 1. Should I go 13 to 1 or 1 to 13?
I think you go from the bottom.
Bottom? Okay. Number 13, coming at number 13. This is Halloween 2, Rob Zombie's 2009 film. Horrendous. I have nothing to say about it. It's just horrendous. He did a terrible job for the sequel. Apparently, he didn't want to make the sequel. He was in some deal with the studio, I think, to have to produce this film. He didn't want to do it. I know that Rob Zombie is not a filmmaker a lot of people like. He does have his fans of his horror films, a handful of them, which I think are good. But this second movie is terrible. It's one of the worst ideas for a storyline ever for Halloween. And the things that he tends to focus on this film are not done well. And he basically abandons everything that he really established in his first film. I felt like the things that he chose to focus on and the way the story went, and the fact that he's seeing visions of his mother in this film are stupid. I think it's a dumb story, and I think it's terrible. I just think it's one of the worst movie experiences I've ever had in the theaters. I went to see it, and I hated this movie. So that's number 13. Coming in at number 12, one I haven't seen that many times. I've probably only seen it these couple times that I've done my rewatches of all the films, but that's Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. This one's really bad too. So basically in Halloween 4, they established that there's this other girl, Jamie, who's like the daughter, I think, of Laurie. And again, it's the same type of situation where she was like adopted, and she's basically this child that gets kind of Michael Myers basically is now after her as well, this child that gets involved in this whole storyline. In this one though, it starts this whole thing where was it? No, that's not Curse. Yeah. At the end of the Halloween 4, he gets messed up and he falls down into a river, and he falls into a hole, and a grenade is tossed in, but then he jumps into the river, which carries him away. This river, this is how the movie starts. Because at the end of the 4, he looks like he's dead at the end of 4. So then in 5, you find out that he fell down this river and got swept away, and he ends up like in this like dilapidated shack. Some man like rescues him from like the shoreline somewhere, and then he ends up getting up and killing this guy and going on his way. And then but now it's like he wants revenge because he almost got killed at the end of the 4th movie. But he kind of becomes a thing where there's again paranormal element. He's now like talking as he's the girl now feels Michael Myers' evil presence in her after like crossing paths with him. And she's basically like a conduit of Michael Myers. Like she all of a sudden she stops talking and she goes into the mental ward and
exorcism of Michael Myers.
Yeah. And then Michael Myers, when he's like near and he's about to kill people, she starts like acting weird, and she's like, I'm just gonna use the word, she sounds deaf. She sounds like mentally challenged. So then she starts like trying to like mouth, like it's so bad. It is horrendous. And this girl who's like a child actor is really bad at it. And it's just like I can go on and on about it. Again, the story is shit. The acting is terrible. Michael Myers is one of the worst masks in this movie of all time. Michael Myers, the guy looks ridiculous that they got dressed like Michael Myers. It's just really, really bad. So what else?
This guy that looks
if Julie wants to bring one up for the 5th movie, go ahead. He looks terrible. Oh man. He steals a dude's car again in this movie and drives around after he kills the owner of the car, and he wears his Halloween mask, and then he's just driving around the town in this guy's Halloween costume, pretending he's this guy. So, and then he goes to pick up his girlfriend in the car, and then he's acting like he's her boyfriend driving around in the car.
But he hasn't talked.
He doesn't talk.
Okay, man. See, like, okay, and how do you tell me some of these aren't corny with these ones? I mean, don't get me wrong. All horror films are corny.
And then the film consists of Loomis yelling at this girl throughout the whole film because he's trying to like figure out where Michael's gonna strike next. And the girl, like I said, she's like connected to Michael now. So he's like, tell me where he's gonna be. And the girl's like, and she's spasming the whole movie. So bad. Okay, that's number 5. Okay.
Nice.
Then you got number 11, Halloween 6, Curse of Michael Myers. This is a very early debut of my boy, Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd is in this film. Okay. Just like Johnny Depp was in Nightmare on Elm Street. This is Paul Rudd's debut here in Halloween.
That's where he got his crush. Yeah.
Halloween 6, Curse of Michael Myers. Terrible. There's a cult storyline in this one where people they believe like there's a cult of Michael Myers. Let's just that's all I'll say about that. There's like a cult of Michael Myers, like people that worship Michael. So the movie starts with somebody trying to sacrifice a baby in the name of Michael Myers, and Michael Myers is just hanging out in this cult. So then, like, the woman gets away, like she escapes with her baby, and Michael chases them. It kind of just goes from there. You learn that like all these people in the town are part of this cult, and like no one knows about it. And then Paul Rudd is like this creepy kid who he plays Tommy from the original Halloween, now grown up. But what he is a guy obsessed with Michael Myers now since his run-in in the first film.
The
And
boogeyman, yeah.
yeah, exactly. But this is like the age of like when people are going on the internet and like finding like message boards and stuff. So Paul Rudd is just like a creepy guy that like stares at this girl like down the street from him that he's like obsessed with, and it turns out like it's because she's like some relative of Michael Myers that he thinks she's going to come back for. It's so bad, but Paul Rudd's in it. So it's number 11. Sorry, number, yeah. 11.
Reminds me of Paul Rudd too, a little bit, is a Rob Lowe.
No, get out of here. How dare you?
No, there seems, I don't know. Yeah, to me in my head, they're the same sort of character.
And then coming in at number 10, it's Halloween Ends, which is the last of the new trilogy by Danny McBride and David Gordon Green, out of the Blumhouse films. Again, just a stupid fucking story, I felt like. Basically, Michael Myers is like, he lost all his power, and this kid like brings people to him to kill, to basically gain his power back, and then they team up together and kill people so he can become stronger. And the kid's in love with Laurie's daughter, who survived from the previous two films. And Julie, you actually saw that you've seen this. You had it on your letterbox, anyways, and it's totally ridiculous. There's a shitty love story, and Jamie Lee Curtis. The only good part about it is when they finally kill Michael at the end of this movie. Otherwise, it's just garbage. The whole thing's really stupid, cheesy, dumb storyline.
I saw it in theaters.
So did I.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then coming in number 9, it's the movie that preceded this, Halloween Kills. This one was just a bunch of brutal murders. I think in terms of gore, or like some of the actual murders that take place in this movie, hence the name Halloween Kills, which were pretty brutal and pretty good in that aspect. Otherwise, I thought it was also an okay movie in the sense that he tried to do something different, and they tried to look at it from the town's perspective on how the town all turns and becomes bad because of the Michael Myers situation. Everyone starts like turning on each other, and they end up killing an innocent man that they think is Michael Myers in this movie. I really liked like where they were going with it, but I just don't feel like they succeeded that well in doing it, but in telling the story they were trying to tell. But it's kind of interesting because the second movie, Halloween 2, it kind of explores some of the aspects of the town and how they reacted to the stuff that happened in the first movie. And I feel like they were trying to tip their hat to that in this film by trying to show you how the town is reacting to the current situation, how people, how mob mentality basically can create that as a result of, shit going down in the society. Right. So it's kind of interesting. Then you got number 8, Halloween Resurrection. This is like the full out 2000s now, like late 90s, 2000s film where you just put a bunch of stars in a movie. Tyra Banks, I think, is in this movie. Busta Rhymes is in this movie. All I got to say about this movie is it's so cheesy and bad. It's almost good. Like it's kind of one of those entertaining bads where it's not boring bad like some of the other films I've just mentioned, but it's kind of entertaining. Busta Rhymes ends up taking out Michael Myers by kung fu kicking him out of a window, and he falls on an electrical line, a power line in the end of this movie. It's fantastic just for that. He's like, trick or treat, motherfucker. And then you see Busta Rhymes like kick him out of a window, like he kung fu kicks him. And there's also a scene where because he has like a reality show where they're all dressed up and they're going through Michael Myers' house, and there's like all these people as walking through his house as contestants, and that's why Busta Rhymes, like, he runs this whole show, and that's why he's in it. There's a scene where he's dressed up as Michael Myers trying to scare people in the house, and he actually encounters the real Michael Myers in the costume, and he tells him off to the point Michael Myers just looks at him and walks away and doesn't kill Busta Rhymes. He thinks he's like one of his other employees, so he's like, "What are you doing in that costume? I'm dressed as Michael. What are you doing? You're gonna ruin the surprise or whatever. Like, get out of here!" And then Michael just like kind of stares at him and just walks on. So pure 90s, early 2000 garbage. Okay. Then you got coming in at number 7, Halloween H2O. This movie was huge when I was younger. This is Josh Hartnett's debut. This movie,
Oh,
okay, his
shit.
debut role. Yeah, he's Laurie's son in this. This is 20 years later. Jamie Lee Curtis reprises her role. Michelle Williams is in this movie. LL Cool J is in this movie. Okay, this is like
actors, like black actors. Hey, there was none in this whole movie, dude.
no, that comes later. So this is like this is 1998, pure 90s film where they just put a bunch of stars in it or emerging young stars. And this is where Michael Myers comes back and tries to kill Laurie again after the events of the original Halloween. Very huge when I was younger. Doesn't hold up as well in comparison, I feel like, over the years when I revisit it now, but it still holds a high place for me. And that's why it comes in at number 7 out of the 13 films for me, just because of my appreciation of this movie when it first came out. I think there's some really good stuff in this and some really good moments, but overall, I feel like it doesn't hold. It's not as good. It hasn't aged as good as I think as some of the other movies. There's just more stuff in the other films. Coming in at number 6, that's Halloween 2018. That's the Danny McBride, David Gordon Green, the first film. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of great starts and stops, like false starts of the franchise. This was a very promising movie when it first came out in 2018. I was really happy about the way they retold the Halloween story in this, with Laurie coming back when she's older, 40 years later now, and having the knowledge that she's had and the fact that she was more prepared to fight against Michael in this one. I really liked this movie when it first came out. I saw it in theaters. Unfortunately, the second and third film in this series were not good like this first movie, and unfortunately they dropped the ball as far as I'm concerned. They could have just made this movie the way they ended it and walked away and not even did those other 2 movies, but they did, unfortunately, and they ruined this trilogy for me. So the first one's really good, very promising. Sorry guys, I know I'm babbling here, but I'm going through the power rankings. Coming in at number 5, you got Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Michael's back. Jamie is Laurie's daughter. This is the introduction about her. She's given her up as an orphan. She's Michael's niece, and she's starting to have nightmares of him in this film. Loomis is back. He survived the explosion at the end of the second film. He's got a huge face disfiguration now, a huge scar on his face. He's got a cane, and he's more unhinged as ever in this film. He's legit crazy and badass in this movie. And I just love it for the Loomis action and the story and the return of Michael Myers in this one. So that was great, coming in at number 5. Coming in at number 4, Halloween 2, the sequel to Halloween number 1. You would think that this would rank higher, but it has a really good start and a really good end to the film. And then it kind of trails off with some nonsense with new characters that you get introduced to in the hospital in the middle of this film, where Laurie's laid up in. And that's where it kind of loses me. I feel like they tried to take away the attention of Jamie Lee Curtis in this film a little bit. Maybe they didn't pay her enough to be in the whole movie, but I think the focus should have been more on her, because she is in this film. But really good Loomis, really good Jamie Lee Curtis, great Michael stuff. But it loses me in the middle of the middle of the movie is just so. As a direct sequel to the first film, though, it's really good. And John Carpenter is still involved in the process of writing the film at this point. Then coming in number 3, very high here. Season of the Witch. Has nothing to do with Michael Myers. Just a great Halloween movie about a conspiracy of a company that basically makes masks for kids that's set out to kill everybody on Halloween day that are wearing these masks. And it's starring a philandering doctor with an 80s porn stash who basically gets in the middle of this whole conspiracy of these masks. and you know, it kind of goes off the rails from there. That's all I'll say about this one. He's like a drunken, philandering doctor who gets in the middle of a conspiracy involving these masks in this film. And it's great stuff. Really great stuff. Has nothing to do with Michael Myers. Coming in number 2, very high on my list. This is where again it gets controversial for folks. Rob Zombie's Halloween from 2007. I think this is Rob Zombie's best film, and I love the approach that he took, the brutal nature and the darkness of this Halloween version. I think redoing the first Halloween film and actually adding on to it and taking some other things into account and showing things from different perspectives, I thought was really well done. And I love this movie. I think it's great. He's my number 2 film and my last film on this ranking. That's how much he went and screwed up the second film compared to his first one. I think the first one's great. The other thing I like about this movie is Michael is huge in this. He's like an ex-wrestler, the guy who plays him. So it makes sense that he can actually dish out the level of like destruction that he does, because this guy's a fucking brick shit house in this film. So I really like that. I really like a lot of the choices that he made in this film and how he looked at the same material from it. And it's just brutal, very gory. If you've ever seen any of Rob Zombie's films, you'll understand. And yeah, number one, Halloween. We've talked about it enough here today. There you go. My power ranking of the Halloween films. And you had to indulge me there, guys, because I spent all weekend watching these movies. So, that's it for now. Those are my power rankings. But controversial, the first movie, of course, first, which I think is on everyone's list, is first. But then I have the Rob Zombie one second, and then the third one, which has nothing to do with Michael Myers, that's my third. So there you go. That's my rankings, folks. So there's my power rankings for that one. So, and thank you for indulging me, guys. I know I've rambled on this episode, but I got love for it. I got love for the franchise, as you can tell. So that's why we do this thing here.
We love to see the passion.